Well, joining me now is Ricardo Latorre, National Officer at Fire Brigades Union. Mr. Latorre, thank you for talking to us at Sky News. I'm sorry to hear of the health conditions being faced by some of those who fought the Grenfell Tower fire. What do we know about the links between that particular blaze and the condition that they're in?
Hi, Samantha. Thank you for having us. These findings, this report will be alarming for all firefighters reading it and listening to it. And we, of course, don't know the exact ins and outs of the Daily Mirror investigation, but what we do know is that from reports from our own members and from the peer-reviewed research that we've commissioned ourselves completely supports the line of the report. Now, that was released earlier this week. It showed that firefighters are getting cancers at a much higher rate than the general public, and sadly, firefighters are dying at a much higher rate than the general public, and they're getting diagnosed with these cancers at a young age. That completely supports the findings of the World Health Organization last year, which categorized the occupation of firefighting as carcinogenic. But I think what's most alarming here and most scandalous is we simply don't have the protections in place for firefighters domestically, the likes of which we see elsewhere in the world, America, Canada, Australia. So we need to seriously be asking the question of why we can't protect our firefighters here in the way that we do in other fire and rescue services around the world.
Yeah, and it's come down to the union, hasn't it, to commission this report. The report is suggesting that it's not just a lack of ongoing health surveillance amongst firefighters, but that there is no routine monitoring for exposure to carcinogens.
Absolutely. The evidence is now clear. We've previously been told by government, by fire bosses, that there isn't enough data domestically to support this link. That can no longer be said. The evidence is clear. Firefighters are dying young and they're dying at an alarming rate from these diseases. So our response to this needs to be three-stage. We need the proper preventative policies in to stop our people getting these diseases in the first place. Diseases that don't just include cancers, by the way. The report also points to alarming rates of heart disease and stroke in firefighters, as well as mental health issues. We then need regular health monitoring of our firefighters like we see in other parts of the world, because we have a firefighters cancer and disease registry that we are running together with the University of Central Lancashire to map the incidence of cancer in firefighters in the absence of anybody else doing it. And what he's telling us is that firefighters aren't just getting these cancers, but they're being diagnosed late at a much more untreatable stage. So it's imperative that we put in place proper national regular health monitoring of firefighters to catch these diseases early. And then ultimately, we need the presumptive legislation in place that identifies these diseases as occupational, which is now beyond a doubt, so that firefighters can get access to the financial and medical support that they so desperately need at such a difficult time of being diagnosed with a cancer or disease as a result of their work.
I also read in the report, particularly as far as Grenfell is concerned, the length of time that the firefighter is wearing the protective suit can also make their health outcomes a lot worse. And it strikes me that that's something where something could be done quite easily.
Of course, there's so much more that fire and rescue services can be doing. There's much more that the National Fire Chiefs Council can be doing to help us mitigate and prevent these risks as well. The reports are clear. The longer that a firefighter is subjected to these exposures, the higher the risk. The longer that a firefighter remains in their PPE, their workwear, the longer the risk. So we need to be putting in proper decon policies, and that includes being able to get firefighters away from the fire ground quickly enough so they can decontaminate properly. Now, there's a clear resource and funding issue there, because we have 12,000 less firefighters sat here today than we did 10 years ago. So getting firefighters relieved and away from the danger area is much more difficult than it was when we had the appropriate number of firefighters. So there is plenty that fire and rescue services can be doing, as well as government.
And you're calling for various changes. One of the most important, it sounds to me, is the classification of this as an occupational hazard, because then that would create some sort of obligation for financial support. What if you don't get any of these changes that you're calling for? What then?
No, we're absolutely calling for that. Now, we've previously taken studies from the US, studies from Scandinavia to make these demands, and we've been told that they can't be applied because they don't apply domestically. So in the absence of government doing it, in the absence of fire bosses doing it, firefighters have gone away themselves and commissioned and funded this independent research that now provides the data domestically. It provides the evidence, it provides the research alongside the World Health Organization's categorization of the job of firefighting as carcinogenic. It can no longer be denied, and we need to review the presumptive legislation so that a firefighter suffering from a cancer, or worse, dying from a cancer, their family doesn't have to prove that it was caught at work, because the evidence points so clearly to the fact that these are occupational diseases. No, we've been refused before in our demands for these legislations and our demands for the health monitoring. We're now going to be taking these demands into the heart of government. We're going to be taking them to the National Fire Chiefs Council that have been too silent and inactive on this matter, in our opinion. Now the entire sector has to pull together and take our demands to government to get the proper protections, the preventative protections, and then the medical and financial support that firefighters so desperately need. I mean, you'll struggle to find a firefighter that hasn't been affected by cancer, either directly or indirectly.
Riccardo Latorre, thank you very much for talking to us on Sky News.